There is a specific kind of dread that belongs only to the hours between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. The world feels abandoned, like you've clipped out of reality and wandered into a space meant only for ghosts, insomniacs, and people who have nowhere else to go. Welcome back to the archive. This is tape 42. Lock your doors and listen. Back in my sophomore year of college, I was completely broke. I worked a grueling shift at a warehouse during the day and took classes in the evening. By the time I had a moment to breathe, it was usually past midnight. That meant doing my laundry at the Wash Tub, a dilapidated 24/7 laundromat on the edge of the industrial district. I hated that place. It was a classic liminal space. The walls were painted a sickly, faded yellow. The fluorescent lights overhead always flickered, emitting a constant, high-pitched electrical hum that drilled into your skull. And the front of the building was entirely glass. Sitting inside at night, surrounded by the darkness of the street, you felt like a fish in a glowing tank. Anyone outside could see you perfectly. You couldn't see anything but your own reflection. It was a Thursday in late November. Freezing rain was lashing against the glass storefront. I was the only person inside. I had thrown my clothes into one of the smaller machines, put on my noise-canceling headphones, and slumped into one of those uncomfortable molded plastic chairs, just staring at my phone. The only other company I had was the dusty dome camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. At 2:15 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. I looked up. A figure stepped out of the freezing rain and into the harsh neon light. It was a woman, or at least I think it was a woman. She was unnaturally tall and alarmingly thin. She was wearing a heavy, bright yellow fisherman's raincoat. The hood was pulled far down over her face, casting deep shadows over her features. She didn't have an umbrella. She was soaking wet. But it wasn't her appearance that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was what she was carrying. She didn't have a laundry basket. Instead, she was dragging a massive, heavy black trash bag behind her. As she pulled it across the faded linoleum floor, it made a sickening, wet squeal. It looked incredibly heavy. It dragged across the ground like dead weight, and wherever it passed, it left a faint, dark smear on the floor behind it. Water, or maybe something thicker. I lowered my phone. I didn't want to stare, but my instincts were screaming at me. Every alarm bell in my head was ringing. She slowly dragged the black bag all the way to the back of the room, stopping in front of the massive industrial washes, the ones meant for heavy rugs and comforters. With a strained, rattling breath, she hoisted the bag up. As it hit the metal rim of the washing machine, I heard a distinct clack. It sounded heavy, dense, like a bowling ball wrapped in wet towels. She shoved the entire bag into the drum without opening it. She didn't put any detergent in. Instead, she pulled a large industrial gallon of bleach from her coat, poured almost half of it directly into the drum, slammed the metal door shut, and fed a handful of quarters into the slot. She pressed the button for the longest, hottest cycle. The machine groaned to life. And then she turned around. She walked over to the row of plastic chairs where I was sitting. There were at least 20 empty seats in that laundromat. She chose the one directly across from me, less than 5 feet away. She sat down heavily. The wet rubber of her raincoat squeaked against the plastic. I glued my eyes to my phone screen. I told myself I was being paranoid. She's just a weird local, I thought. Just mind your business, don't make eye contact. But the silence in the room was deafening. Even through my headphones, with no music playing, I could hear the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of that heavy black bag tumbling inside the industrial washer. 2 minutes passed. I slowly, cautiously raised my eyes just enough to look over the top of my phone. Underneath the shadow of her yellow hood, she was staring dead at me. Her head was tilted slightly to the side. She wasn't looking at her phone. She wasn't looking at the washing machines. She was locked onto my face, and she wasn't blinking. My heart started hammering against my ribs. A cold sweat broke on my forehead. The thump, thump, thump from the back of the room seemed to be getting louder. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided my clothes weren't worth my life. I'd leave them in the machine, walk out into the rain, and come back tomorrow during daylight. I slowly stood up, grabbing my backpack. She didn't move. Her gaze just tracked me as I stood. I kept my eyes on the floor, power walked past her, and headed straight for the glass front door. I reached out, grabbed the metal handle, and pushed. It didn't move. I pushed harder. The door rattled in its frame, but it wouldn't open. Panic flared in my chest. I looked closer at the glass. Through the condensation and the rain, I saw it. Wrapped tightly around the exterior handles of the double doors was a thick, rusted metal chain secured with a heavy brass padlock. We were locked in. But I watched her walk through that door just 5 minutes ago. She didn't stop to lock it behind her. She had walked straight to the washing machines, which meant she didn't lock the door. Someone else was out there in the dark. Someone had followed her in, waited until she was inside, and then locked the trap shut. I froze. My breath fogged up the glass. I slowly turned around to look at the woman in the yellow raincoat. She was still sitting there, but now she was smiling. It was a wide, unnatural stretch of her lips, barely visible beneath the hood. Suddenly, the industrial washing machine shifted gears. It entered the high-speed spin cycle. The machine violently shuddered against the floor. A horrific, rhythmic bam, bam, bam echoed through the laundromat. It sounded like something solid was trying to break out from the inside. And then I saw it. Bubbling out from the soap dispenser of the industrial machine, spilling over the metal lip and pouring onto the white linoleum floor, was thick, pinkish-red foam. It smelled overwhelmingly of bleach and raw iron, the smell of blood. The woman slowly stood up from her chair. She reached a pale, trembling hand deep inside her yellow raincoat. I didn't wait to see what she was pulling out. Adrenaline exploded through my veins. I remembered seeing a door marked Employees Only, Utility near the bathrooms at the back. I sprinted. I grabbed a rolling metal laundry cart and hurled it backward down the aisle to slow her down. It crashed into the washing machines with a deafening screech. I reached the utility door, grabbed the knob, and shoved. It was locked. Behind me, I heard the wet slapping sound of her rubber boots running across the linoleum. She was fast, unbelievably fast. I took a few steps back and threw my entire body weight against the cheap wooden door. The frame splintered. I crashed into the dark, dusty utility room and slammed the door behind me, frantically scanning for a lock. There was a deadbolt. I threw it just as a massive weight slammed against the other side of the door. Bang! The wood bowed inward. She was throwing herself against the door. Bang! "Let me in," a voice hissed from the other side. It didn't sound like a woman. It sounded low, raspy, and distorted. I looked around the pitch-black room. Above the electrical panels, near the ceiling, was a small rectangular ventilation window leading to the back alley. I scrambled up a stack of empty detergent buckets, my hands shaking so violently I could barely grip the windowsill. I pushed the rusty latch. It gave way. Crack! One of the hinges on the wooden door broke. The door was giving way. I squeezed my head and shoulders through the narrow window. The metal frame scraped against my ribs, tearing my shirt and cutting my skin. I kicked wildly, forcing the rest of my body through and tumbled headfirst into the freezing mud of the back alley. I didn't stop. I ran through the dark, rain-soaked alleys for what felt like miles until I saw the bright lights of a 24-hour diner. I ran inside, covered in mud and blood, and screamed for them to call the police. The police arrived at the wash tub 20 minutes later. They found the front doors chained shut from the outside. They had to use bolt cutters to get in, but the laundromat was completely empty. The woman in the yellow raincoat was gone. Whoever had chained the door from the outside was gone. I gave my statement, still shaking, wrapped in a blanket in the back of a squad car. But I noticed something out the window. The officers didn't let me go back inside to get my clothes. In fact, within an hour, men in hazmat suits had arrived. They taped off the entire building. They spent hours focused on that industrial washing machine in the corner. I asked the detective what they found inside the black bag. He just looked at me with an expression I will never forget. It was a mix of pity and absolute horror. "You're very lucky you didn't stay to watch the spin cycle finish, son," was all he said. I never went back to that laundromat. It was permanently closed a week later. I still don't know what was in that bag, but sometimes when it's raining outside and my house is perfectly quiet, I can still hear that heavy, wet thump, thump, thump. This has been Tape 42. Stay out of liminal spaces after dark, and remember, hit the subscribe button if you want to survive the night. Keep your eyes on the cameras. The archive is closing.